Rivals Season 3 is just a few weeks away, so while I wait, I've decided to take a look at Marvel's newest game, Mystic Mayhem, which contains a bunch of characters we may never see in Rivals. So just like I did with that game, I'll be reading the very first comic appearance of every single Mystic Mayhem character. Except the ones that are also in Rivals, you'll have to watch my other video for those. We kick off this journey in the 50s, before they were Marvel, but after they were Timely. It's Atlas Comics, and they've just released Black Knight #1. We travel all the way back to the medieval era, where Sir Percy has just been summoned by Merlin. It turns out Percy's cousin Mordred is planning to assassinate King Arthur, so Merlin transforms Percy into the Black Knight before the duo is immediately attacked by assassins. Percy wipes the floor with them as we cut to King Arthur, who's also being attacked, but the Black Knight manages to arrive in time to save him. So Arthur makes him an official Knight of Camelot before we cut to the next day where Arthur's gone missing. Sir Percy is about to go search for him, but Merlin decides to give him a sword equal to Excalibur, the Ebony Blade, using it to slice through the kidnappers and a metal door, saving Arthur as the comic ends. Jumping a decade ahead, we land straight into the Marvel era with Uncanny X-Men #12. Cerebro is freaking the hell out as Professor X says that the strongest mutant they've ever faced is heading their direction. The X-Men create defenses around the mansion while Xavier starts to rant about his backstory, explaining that his dad was killed in a nuclear bomb test, and his lab partner Dr. Marco immediately started trying to seduce Xavier's mom. It works, and we cut to years later as they're married, but it turns out Dr. Marco only did it because Xavier's family was rich, completely neglecting them after moving in. In the present day, the mansion begins rumbling as we cut back to Xavier and his new stepbrother Kane fighting, accidentally causing a massive lab explosion that kills Dr. Marco. We flash to them in high school, and Xavier is using his powers to be the best at literally everything, Kane becoming increasingly jealous. Going a few more years ahead, the two of them are serving in the Korean War, where Kane finds the lost temple of Sidorak, grabbing a jewel before the temple collapses, trapping him inside. We finally cut back to the present as a massive figure crashes through the mansion, Xavier's stepbrother, Kane Marco, aka the Juggernaut. Next up is Captain America #117. The Red Skull has just used the Cosmic Cube to switch bodies with Steve and banish him to an island in the middle of nowhere, which happens to be the same island Red Skull banishes everyone he doesn't like, which is a little unfortunate because Steve is currently in the body of Red Skull, so everyone attacks him. But the real Red Skull decides to stop watching at that exact moment, assuming Cap must die here, right? Well, suddenly a Falcon flies out of nowhere and saves him, allowing him to rush into the forest and take off the Red Skull mask, hoping nobody recognizes the Skull's actual face. We cut to the real Skull, who's living it up in Steve's body, taking an interview where he tells everyone Bucky's death was just a publicity stunt, before the comic ends with Steve meeting the bird's owner, Sam Wilson, aka the Falcon. Reaching the 70s, we get Savage Tales #1. Ted Sallis is working in a lab where he's created a bioweapon for the government, but he decides he can't live with the blood that would be on his hands if they used it, so he steals the only vial and runs away into a swamp with his girlfriend. But it turns out she was only dating him for his money, so now that he's leaving his job, she's turned on him and tries to steal the vial. He fights off the men she's brought and drives away, crashing into a swamp where the vial cracks open, mixing with the water and transforming him into Man-Thing. He climbs out and kills the two men before sparing his ex after she begs for her life, ending the story by climbing back into the swamp, his new home. Our next character is in Marvel Premiere #21. We open to Iron Fist arriving at Colleen Wing's home, but uh-oh, it's been ransacked, and he's suddenly attacked by her friend Mercedes Knight, aka Misty Knight, who thinks Danny is the one who kidnapped Colleen. He easily knocks her out, but an invisible ninja shows up and attacks him before running away. He chases them down all the way to the Temple of Kali, where Colleen and her dad are being held hostage. He beats through the waves of grunts before he's challenged by the living goddesses, but they're actually beating him, so he decides to break Colleen's chains so at least she can escape. Though, in doing so, he accidentally weakens a massive statue, causing it to fall, the goddesses having to use all of their power to save their followers, forcing them to flee to regain their strength as the comic ends with a ninja about to stab Danny. A few years later, we get the 8-page long Captain Britain #8, which gives us our second Psylocke we've read about in this channel, Betsy Braddock, as she chases down her twin brother Brian Braddock, aka Captain Britain. She's begging for his help as their brother Jamie has apparently gotten into a violent car crash, so they hop in a plane and start to fly home. But Betsy suddenly starts seeing visions of monsters that aren't there, causing the plane to crash. What the my script straight up says brain. I'm a fucking dumbass. I wrote brain. Brain transforms into Captain Britain and saves her before it explodes, when suddenly the villain who was causing the visions appears, Dr. Sin. We don't get to see him do anything though, as we've got to hop into Devil Dinosaur #1. We open to millions of years ago as a bunch of prehistoric men are attacking some baby dinosaurs. One of the babies just refuses to die though, so they decide to light it on fire before running away. It still manages to survive, however, and the fire turns its skin red, making him Devil Dinosaur. A child from another human tribe shows up and nurses the dino back to health, deciding to use their strength to keep the valley safe. We cut a few years ahead and they're fighting the villainous Thunderhorn, managing to beat him after a long battle. We cut to the human tribe that attacked Devil, and they've elected a new leader, one brave enough to take back the valley from the duo, so they start setting up traps as the comic ends. We jump to the end of the 80s with Alpha Flight #56, which if you haven't heard of them, they're basically the Canadian Avengers. Vindicator and Sasquatch are currently inside of their teammate Box, who's like a robot who can absorb metal to become bigger robots. He's just absorbed a massive amount and transformed into a rocket ship capable of warping through space faster than light. Box wasn't really prepared to deal with going that fast, so he's gone completely insane. And if it couldn't get any worse, they're also taking care of a mutant child goblin, who has the ability to swap dimensions with their twin sister sister Laura. Normally, Laura is the one in the real world, but Goblin switched to protect her from Box. We get our character in that other dimension Laura is trapped in for one single panel, as the Dream Queen is watching her wander around. Which is hilarious, since this was the one character in the game I've literally never heard of. And of course, their first appearance is a single panel cameo that tells me absolutely nothing about them. We cut back to the team as they found Box's brain, which turns out to have a tumor on it. Goblin starts wailing at it, but it ends up doing more damage than good. But luckily, they were also hanging out with a doctor when Box went crazy, so he's able to direct Vindicator on how to safely remove the tumor, saving their friend. Immediately skipping into the 90s, we get one of Marvel's most underrated and underused characters in Sleepwalker #1, which starts with, you guessed it, Sleepwalker appearing in front of Rick Sheridan as he plays a game of basketball. He starts freaking out and suddenly wakes up, revealing it was all a dream, going about his day and hanging out with his girlfriend before going back to bed the next night. He's dreaming of them on the beach when suddenly Sleepwalker appears again, turning the sand under him into quicksand. But Rick realizes that Sleepwalker is wearing a medallion that seems to be the source of his powers, ripping it off, which causes Sleepwalker to vanish. The next night, he sleeps perfectly fine with no weird dreams, but when he wakes up, he sees Sleepwalker on the news. Later on, he falls asleep on a boat ride with his girlfriend, and Sleepwalker appears above him until she screams and wakes him up. He's now terrified of the creature, so he does everything he can to stay awake, until he ends up in the middle of a robbery where he gets knocked unconscious, causing Sleepwalker to fully manifest, chasing the thieves down and using his matter manipulation powers to twist their surroundings and catch them, before the comic ends with Rick waking up and Sleepwalker vanishing again. Honestly, this comic is the main reason I wanted to make this video. I was really excited when I heard he was going to be in this game at launch. I don't normally plug other people's content, but genuinely, if you want to learn more about him, I'd check out this video. It goes way more in depth than I could here. Speaking of major crossovers, we've got Infinity War #1, which is actually nothing like the Infinity War you're probably thinking of if you've only seen the movies. That storyline is much closer to the Infinity Gauntlet crossover. Infinity War is a sequel to that. And just to catch you up, Gauntlet ended with Thanos losing the Infinity Stones to Adam Warlock, who expunged all evil and good from himself to become the ultimate logical god. Thanos is hanging out at his farm when he starts sensing a massive shift in the universe. We cut down to Earth and Spider-Man is being followed by our character, Doppelganger, a twisted animalistic version of the Wallcrawler. We quickly cut back to the cosmic scale as Galactus has just found Eternity, the embodiment of the entire universe, in a catatonic state, which is probably not a good thing. Back on Earth, we see a few more heroes fighting twisted versions of themselves, as Thanos is finally contacted by the man causing this all, the physical embodiment of Adam Warlock's evil side, Magus, who reveals he's created an evil shadow of every hero in the universe, and if the shadow manages to beat them in a fight, they take their place, all in an attempt to create an army that could take Warlock down. Thanos rejects the plan though, as he doesn't even trust himself with the Infinity Stones after the Gauntlet event, so why would he trust the physical embodiment of evil with them? We cut back to Earth where some heroes have won their fights, but some lost. Spider-Man actually managed to beat Doppelganger, but funnily enough, when Infinity War ends, Doppelganger is the only Shadow version who stays alive, becoming a recurring villain for Spidey and even joining Carnage's weird little family thing he had going with Shriek, Demogoblin, and Carrion. Our next comic actually isn't even Marvel at all. It's Spawn #9 from Image Comics. Spawn is roaming around a medieval-era forest when he finds a woman in tattered clothes screaming about how her sister has been kidnapped. Spawn decides to help her, but after they make it to the cave, the woman reveals it was a trap, as she's the Hellspawn hunter, Angela, who through a series of complicated rights issues eventually ended up belonging to Marvel, and would officially canonically appear at Age of Ultron #10. Spawn and Angela get into a massive battle. She actually ends up winning, but we cut to modern day where Angela is applying to get a hunting license to hunt Spawn again. I don't really read Spawn comics, so I'm not 100% sure what's happening here, but that's what it looks like. Anyway, she tracks him down and beats him again, sending him into a pocket dimension inside of his cloak. But he drags her down with him, and she freaks the hell out, flying away and allowing him to live. A man nearby who seems to know Spawn mentions that Angela was an angel, as Spawn finds her weapon she dropped and just presses a random button, causing him to teleport somewhere as the comic ends. Sticking with #9s, we got Daredevil #9. We open to Matt Murdock and Black Widow hanging out playing piano, before we cut to a similar scene but focusing on our next character, Maya Lopez, aka Echo. We get her backstory, explaining that her father was killed, so she was sent to an expensive boarding school by one of her father's business partners, where she became amazing at the piano despite being deaf. It turns out that business partner was the Kingpin, as he watches her grow, not only becoming a professional pianist, but a professional boxer as well. We cut back to Matt, where one of his clients is suddenly shot by an assassin, so he chases them down, eventually catching and beating them in a fight. However, it turns out there was 2 assassins, but he actually beats the second one easier than the first one. The comic ends with Kingpin telling Echo he has an assignment for her. The second comic that made me want to make this video is Sentry #1. The comic starts with a man waking up and swearing he heard laughter he hasn't heard in years. The laugh of the void. He heads downstairs to open a book secretly containing his super serum, as we get his backstory, explaining that a scientist gave him the serum, which moves his molecules slightly forward in time, making him practically immortal and turning him into the superhero, the Sentry. The scientist warns him that it could be dangerous to drink too much, as we see the Avengers teaming up with the Sentry to fight the villain, the Void. We cut back to modern day where Robert is debating on drinking the serum, claiming he might need to don his costume and become the Sentry again if the Void is really coming back. He finally caves in and drinks it, turning around to see that the Void has taken over his dog, so he attacks the villain just in time for his wife to walk in and reveal that the serum Robert was drinking was just alcohol, and he had just just kicked their innocent dog. She also mentions how he's had a history of drinking problems, while in his head, he talks about how no one can remember the Sentry except for him, as we finally get to see his costume, which turns out to be just a regular jacket with a towel taped to the back. The comic ends with him stepping outside and flying? Settling into the 2000s, we got Astonishing X-Men #4, which starts right after a cure for mutants has been discovered, and the X-Men have heard rumors that they used a kidnapped mutant to develop the cure, so they're heading to the labs to check it out. While they're gone though, the alien Ord breaks into the mansion, seeking revenge against the X-Men. He eventually runs into two students, Wing and Hisako Ichiki, aka Armor, whose power is blue in her first appearance, despite it normally being red in more modern comics. She knocks him down, but he easily hits her back even harder, grabbing Wing, injecting him in the spine with the mutant cure, and then dropping him to his death, declaring man was not meant to fly. Heading back to the X-Men, they found the mutant, but none of them recognize her, when suddenly they're all gassed and knocked out, except Kitty Pryde, who is phasing to the bottom levels, where she eventually finds Colossus, who's been held hostage. He viciously murders the guards, and then the comic ends with him asking Kitty if he's finally died. Our next comic is Free Comic Book Day 2007, Spider-Man #1. That title really rolls off the tongue. If you aren't aware, every year on the first Saturday of May, some major comic companies will release a few free comics to get people interested in upcoming stories. We open to a car speeding through New York, announcing themselves as Overdrive, while on a video call with his boss, Martin Lee, aka Mr. Negative, who we actually never see beyond his face. Spider-Man catches up to the car and rips the top off, but Overdrive tases him, so we cut to a bunch of villains betting on Spider-Man to lose the fight. He's so distracted by the villain, he's not even paying attention to all the innocent lives in danger. So a new hero, Jackpot, shows up to save them. Him thanking her and her responding, "Anytime, Tiger," which between her name, hair, and phrase, you'd probably guess is MJ. But it's actually not, though in recent years, MJ has become the newest version of Jackpot. Eventually, Overdrive gets hit by a police car, and Spider-Man is able to web him up as the comic ends. Returning to Matt Murdock, we've got Daredevil 111. We instantly get our character Lady Bullseye as she runs around New York, explaining that she was a victim of human trafficking as a child. But the men who were trafficking her were killed by Bullseye, so she views him as a hero and decided to become his successor. She kills a bunch of random guys as we cut to Matt Murdock, who is cheating on his wife. Like, straight up, that is literally all he does in this comic. He goes on a walk with a woman who isn't his wife, she goes home with him, they fuck, and then he questions why he doesn't feel bad for doing it. Moving on to a much lighter note, we've got Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur #1. We get the other half of our character from earlier as we see Lunella Lafayette, aka Moon Girl. She's heading to school to show off her science project, but she gets bullied by the entire class. That night, her parents ask her why she doesn't try to make friends, and she says science is the only friend she needs. While out metal detecting, she comes across a green orb, as we flash to millions of years ago, showing Moon Boy and Devil Dinosaur running through a jungle with a similar looking orb. They've just stolen it from a bunch of violent prehistoric men, but eventually get cornered, and Moon Boy is brought to the brink of death, somehow activating the orb, which opens a portal. A bunch of the men walk through it, so with his final words, Moon Boy sets his only friend, Devil Dinosaur, into the portal to avenge him. That portal ends up leading right to Moon Girl's orb while she's at school the next day. The men start attacking the kids, but Devil Dinosaur steps out and scares them off, grabbing Moon Girl and running away as the comic ends. And that's it. That's every character that's currently in Mystic Mayhem. Oh, wait, yeah, there's also this guy, Thread, who I spent an embarrassing amount of time looking for before I realized he was an original character of the game, and hasn't appeared in any comics yet. Maybe one day he will, though. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to hear about it, and in general, let me know if you just liked hearing about characters who aren't in Rivals.